Welcome. I'm going to be your instructor for this next sequence where we're going to learn what it is to be a galactic warden, protecting the universe. Let me tell you, there's nothing like having the feeling of the power of the entire universe at your disposal. That's what we're going to get to, and I'm going to introduce you to your new best friend, the Galactic Warden Field Manual. Never do some data exploration without it. For the next 16 hours, we're going to be walking through this. No bathroom breaks, so buckle up, because it's... Oh, just a second. We've got an incoming transmission. Yep, go ahead.
We got a transponder route in quadrant 4, and we're going to need
but I'm in the...
If you just let me talk for a second.
All right, we'll get right on it. Thanks.
Wait, hold on. Don't hang up.
All right, change of plans. It's nothing like learning on the job anyway. One of the things that we measure for these transponders is the latency. How fast are they at transmitting these messages? If the latency gets too high, we got a problem. That's the kind of alert that we're sitting on today. That's what we're going to investigate together. Now, in order to do that, normally we'd be in the Galactic Warden headquarters working on the production system. But all I've got loaded today is a training environment, so we're going to be starting from scratch. All right, we're looking at the main interface for a sparkly new Gravwell deployment. Let's get to work on this transponder issue. First step, load up the data. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna go to the data ingester. We're gonna get this file uploaded through the user interface. Normally, this data would be streaming in from a variety of ingesters, endpoints, network logs, network taps, you name it, cloud. That's how the data would be flown in. But in this instance, we're gonna upload it manually through the UI. And then we're gonna go over to the Query Studio. And this is the main area where we're gonna create, run, and modify searches to figure out what's going on. Now, behind the scenes, when we took that data in, Gravwell was distributing that across our indexers in our cluster, getting it organized within our purpose-built data lake, all that stuff, but that part's not really important. And you may not need to ever even write these queries from scratch, but it is important to understand how the queries work, because that's the fundamental building block to the rest of how Gravwell operates. And so the first thing is, the data gets separated into rough buckets. These just have names that we gave it on ingest called the tag. And that is the very way that Gravwell initially separates out that raw data. So if I say tag equals test, that's just a way of saying, hey, give me all the raw data that you've got within this time frame. And that's what we're seeing down below here. And now, when it comes to actual query modules, Gravwell separates these into 3 different types. We've got extractors, we've got processors, and we've got renderers. And so if we start with an extractor, we're gonna pull out the type of the data here. We run that search. Then on one of these raw entries down below, we can expand it here and see the enumerated values that flow with that data source. The rest of these are built in, but here we've got the type com service. That's the value that we extracted right here. And if we pipe that into a renderer module, in this case the table renderer, that lets us take it from that raw data view, and we're able to see a curated rendering of what we would like based on the types of things that we said. And so we've got an extractor, we've got a renderer. Let's add in our first processor module. And this module is going to be your good friend when you're building out these queries, because this module says we're only going to look at 1,000 entries no matter how many there are. Because with these transponders, we're only looking at a subsample that we uploaded through here. But this could be hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of entries, terabytes of data. And so you don't want to necessarily ask Gravwell, send me all that stuff. No. We're going to be smart about it. We're going to say, let's look at a little bit of data at a time while we're building out these queries so that we're being intelligent. And we've got a variety of extractors here. We're going to pull out, this one's JSON. There's lots of different ones. We could just use any extractor here because, again, this is the raw data. Gravwell doesn't care what you use to get the data out, to pull out the values from that raw data. So we could use a regular expression to pull this out. I don't recommend it. I don't at all. But sometimes that's all you've got, and you work with what the tools you've got. That's how data wardens operate. Instead, we'll use the JSON module and extract out the values that we're interested in and get those set up. Let's move these to the next line to make it a little bit more clear. But we're going to extract these values, we're going to do the limit, we're going to pipe it into the table. And that gives us a more raw looking at what we've got available in a nice visual. Now let's say we might be interested in a little bit more of a practical query. Let's say, how many different transponders do we have within each quadrant? Well, we don't know if a transponder's giving multiple messages, so let's just add a processing module to only count the unique. And then let's count the name by the quadrant. So that's going to give us a counting of what those are. And then let's table the quadrant and the count. Let's test that query out with our limit in here, and that's looking good. We've got a count of the different transponders within a given quadrant. So let's remove this and give us the range over the entire data set over for the 7 days. And now we can see that we've got these more accurate numbers. And let's get to the task at hand. Which one of these is having latency issues? Well, let's sub out. Let's sub out these processing modules. Let's add in a stats module here to calculate the latency millisecond by quadrant. And then let's chart that up. Chart the mean by quadrant to get an idea about what we're looking at. So we're switching from a table renderer to a chart renderer, and that's going to give us our values. So we can see most of our quadrants are sitting down here at some average latency of near zero, which is the desired and typical effect. We've also got a couple quadrants here that seem to be creeping up over time. So I think we've identified some of our culprits. Now we can boil this down. Instead of going for mean by quadrant, let's just do mean by transponder name. Calculate that up, and here we can see, yeah, there's a number of transponders that are acting a little funky here. Rather than do this in a chart though, let's get this tabled up so that we can ship this off to the ops folks to get working on it. So we've got, it looks like we've auto sorted. So we have these 4 transponders causing us trouble. So we're gonna get this, we'll get this to the ops team, we'll figure it out. We've accomplished the main task here of identifying which transponders are in trouble. And now, it's important, again, to understand the fundamentals of how this works. We've got our 3 different module types, but you don't have to worry about being an expert at this. You can take and go from here. We've got our kits. These are pre-built use cases for the different systems that we've got. There's nothing set up for our transponders. This is a custom data source that we're using within our Wardens, but we do have things for common data sources like NetFlow. And this can get you up and running pretty quickly with easy to build out, easy to run dashboards and things if you've got that NetFlow stuff rolling. But we've also got, for things even with our custom logs, we've got the Data Explorer. We could come in here, we could go over to the test tag, which is what we put our data in, and Data Explorer will try and figure out what data is in there. We could set up and say, yeah, it looks like Data Explorer is saying, hey, we think this is JSON data. Let's put this in, and we can begin walking through this and setting up fields and filters, looking at these values without having to build these queries from scratch. But if you look at it, the query over here that we've got, this is the core building block. Any dashboard that you see, any tile on the dashboard is using a query under the hood. The automations, where we build out the automated stuff for hitting webhooks, for taking out auto blocking, responding to incidents, calculating and correlating weak signals into strong signals, all that happens by taking searches and doing actions off of them and building off of that raw thing. All right, I'm gonna run this down. You did great. Let's get this sent over to the team and we'll investigate this a little bit further. We'll start the training process again another day, but you picked up this pretty quickly. Good job learning on the job. I think you're gonna do just great. See you next time.